Hello everyone, and welcome to my second video. I don't have a tripod or something to hold my camera, so I decided to do a simpler one today instead of jerking around and showing machines. It's on order, so it should come soon. So today I thought I would talk about needles for your sewing machine. And I have a collection of some of the needles, but the ones that you are more likely to use. And here are the basics of all the needles, and we're going to talk about these. This first row right here are called universal needles. These are standard sewing machine needles and I have different brands, and we're going to discuss them. But the most important thing is size. Based on the thread and the fabric that you choose to use, you need to have the appropriate size. The smaller the number, the smaller the hole is, the eye of your needle is. All these are the same type of sewing machine, 130 705H's, which fit most standard sewing machines today. And we're going to start out. This is a Schmitz. Good German brand, excellent needles. Many people swear by them. This is a 70 or a number 10 in the USA. This is good for really fine thread like 80 weight cotton, 100 weight cotton, 80, 100, 120, 150 weight polyester threads. These are great, but the universal needles have a ball point. They are not sharp, so they don't damage your fabric when they go through. However, when you're quilting, if you ever hear that popping as it's going through your quilt sandwich, that means your needle is not sharp enough or it's not big enough. And then we come up here to the 75. Now this is 70 as well, a 70 number 9, which is interesting. In Oregon, there's 79. In Schmitz, there's 70-10s. But this is a Japanese brand, and many people like them. Oregon needles are just a little smidgen tad longer than Schmidt needles. And my machines work well with all of them, but I know some machines like Oregon and some machines like Schmidt. And that's what you have to find out. But again, this is a 70, but from the Oregon company, which is Japanese made. Here is an 80 Oregon, which is 80 number 11 in the US, which is a little bit bigger eye. I would use these for standard 50 weight, 60 weight cotton. And here are Schmitz 80s as well. German, Japanese. Now we have this brand, Grossbeckert. They make the best sewing machine needles I have ever used, but they are harder to find. This is an 80 number 12 universal, which means it does not have a sharp point, but has a nice eye. But Grossbeckert makes the needles for long arm machines. So many people like them. In the US, they're branded under the Singer name. Grossbeckert bought out the Singer needle division when SVP decided to get rid of that. These are really good needles, but they're hard to find. If you can find these, I highly recommend them. And that was an 80-12, and here's a 90-14. I would use these with 30 weight, 28 weight. 28 weight may go to 100, but you can try it. It depends on how the thread is woven, how many plies, how thick it is that you would use these. And most thread brands recommend a needle size per weight of thread, and that's a good guide. If you get a popping sound or like it looks like it's pulling your fabric when you're sewing, then I would try a larger needle or a sharper needle. And that's what we're going to talk about now. These are called top stitch needles. They are very, very sharp and point. You can get a quilting needle, which is not quite as sharp as a top stitch or Microtex needle. Top stitch, Microtex can almost be used interchangeably. Depends on where you're located. And here we have Schmidt 8112s, which again I would use with standard 50, 60 weight cotton, which is what I use most of the time, or 80, 100 weight polyester. These are 9014 top stitch. These I would use with 30 weight thread or a thicker thread, which are great for high definition embellishment, big stitch quilting, things like that with your machine. And these work great for quilting. They're sharp and they go through the batting and your fabric, everything perfectly. And then here is Schmidt 100s, 30, 20, but I use these with a double ply 30 weight silk thread that I get from a company in France called Fils au Chinois. They're a really, really good company, but their thread is not inexpensive. Now, if you're into embroidery, we talk about embroidery needles. This is a 7511, which is the standard size that my Isacord embroidery thread uses, or Mettler Polysheen, which is a standard embroidery thread. It is a 2-ply polyester high sheen, but Isacord tends to be a little bit thinner than a standard 40 weight thread, so that's why you use this. The gold means that they're titanium coated, so you get, I usually out of a standard needle get around 100,000 stitches, but out of a gold needle you can double or triple that easily. But here is the issue with using gold. If you break a needle, they hit your machine harder, and it has been known to damage the timing on your machine. So you have to be careful with if you're a beginner of using gold, and that is a warning. And then here are the 90s for thicker embroidery threads, silk embellishment, larger cottons that I use in the hoop quilting. And then you also get, here's an organ pack of embroidery. These are not gold or titanium, these are standard needles, but it's a supply. So you get 3 7511s and 2 9014s, which is a good pack. These came with one of my machines, I don't know. And then we have our super specialty needles. This is a metallic needle. You use this with metallic thread. I use the 80s, a lot of 8012s. A lot of people will use a 9014, but my Mettler Isomet that I like to use likes these Schmidt metallic needles. So that's why I use them. It likes those. Then we have twin needles. These are great. These are standard 8012s, but they're 2.5 millimeters apart, so you can actually sew 2 lines of thread. I use these for fancy embellishment, but they're harder to free motion quilt with because you have to protect both needles, not just the one. Also, what you can use these for, you can get a wider width, like a 3 or 4 millimeter, or even a 5 millimeter if you have a 9 millimeter machine. And you can use these to sew across a layer cake with 2 threads at a time. Then you only have to cut. You sew once with the line between the middle of the needles, and then you cut down the middle and you have 2 half square triangle squares. And these are Grossbeckert stretch needles. These are for like double knits, sweater knit, stretchy fabric, jersey, t-shirt fabric. And they're very sharp, but they're designed not to pull the fabric when you're sewing, so it doesn't ravel or pull a thread in your stretchy fabrics. Now here, these are fun. These are wing needles, and these are designed, and you see the wings on them. They actually bore a hole into your fabric, and that's for certain types of heirloom sewing, like making introdu and other lace works on clothing. You can also use them to embellish on your quilts with some interesting types of stitches. Like you use your eyelet stitch, and it bores a little hole, and then the eyelet sews it for you on your machine. Now, these are wonderful needles. A friend of mine in Canada, Bernie Taubish, he is a sewing machine man, and he repairs sewing machine. He sent these to me because I've been trying to get a hold of them. They're called Organ HXL5s. And these things, they're like gold, but they sew magnificently. And this is just a little sample pack, but I can show you that it has the bigger eyes, sharper point. They're titanium coated, but the needles themselves are thinner, so they make it easy and don't leave holes in your fabric. These little HXL5s, but they are very, very hard to find, and I absolutely love them. And now, many of your machines came with, based on your brand, you have Inspira, which comes with Pfaff, Singer, Husqvarna, Viking. And these are little sewing kits, and you see you get some universal, stretch, embroidery, and a jeans needle. And jeans needles are designed basically to sew jeans. And this one came from Janome, and I am not familiar with them, but Janome gets their needles from Oregon, but they're color-coded. See the colors on the top? So you'll hear people say, I'm using a Janome blue or a Janome red, and that is basically the size. I've never used them because I buy needles in bulk. I have boxes of these, and I just took these out. But my favorite needle overall are the Grossbeckerts, if you can find them, or the Organ HLX5s, which are difficult to find, but they're wonderful for quilting, piecing, and general sewing. Now, a little extra tip, threaders. If you have an older machine, you don't have a threader, or if you're using a smaller needle than a 70, 75, or a larger than 100, because I do have some 130s somewhere, top stitch needles for really thick thread, then you need a threader. These are the old timey ones. Here in the Netherlands, they call them Wilhelmina heads, but they have different heads on them. They're cheap, they're inexpensive, and they're great for threading the needle. Just remember to push it through the back and pull your thread from the front to the back on a sewing machine. Then you have more expensive threaders. This is one from Clover, which I use because especially with finer threads and finer needles, because it's a little finer detailed, and they come off and you have your little wire loop right here. I hope you can, there it is. I hope you can see it. But get you a good needle threader. You'll always need it. You'll break your needle threader on your machine if it has it. If you have an older one, you don't even have a needle threader, so you really need a good needle threader. I suggest that. Now, for loading needles, you have little things like this. And see the flat side on this? This is for the flat side of your needles so you can push it up into your machine. And it helps you really get in there and get that needle aligned and pushed all the way up. Because if you don't push your needle all the way up and get it properly seated in your machine, you can break the needle or it will skip stitches, and it can also prick your bobbin case, which will then cause your bobbin thread to snag because it will create a burr. So that is very, very important. And my Husqvarna, my FAF, came with this. This is called the multi-purpose tool, but it's used to go under your foot when you go over big seams to keep the sewing level. But this little hole right here is for you to remove and to add your needle. As you see, the little flat side where it holds it straight. So it makes it easy to slide it up into your machine. These are great little tools to have, and let me tell you, they save you a lot of time when you're sewing very, very heavy. So I hope this helps you, and I want to wish everybody a fantastic weekend. And if you have questions, always feel free to ask. And everyone have a great day. Thank you. Bye.